We survived!
Christmas came a few days early. We didn't know about Xavier Lucas. We got him. We weren't sure about Ernest Willer. We got him. Luke Fickell's first ever recruiting class. Pretty damn good. We're all here to talk about it. We've got our favorite guest today. You are live on a special edition signing day spectacular of the Bucky Report.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome into the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, in for our midweek special edition episode of Signing Day, Justin's favorite day of the year. It's Christmas come early. And of course, joining us, we have the wonderful, the amazing,
the great Ryan Herrings.
The great Ryan Herrings, host of Locked On Badgers.
Ryan needs to play that when he goes back into the house after the show. His wife is going to be like...
We are at the Bucky Report on Twitter, at the Bucky Report on YouTube, and wherever you can get your podcast. If you like what we're doing, and only if you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button so you can know when we make fresh new content. Gentlemen, the dust has settled on National Signing Day of Luke Fickell's first class. This is amazing stuff. I mean, I think we can all agree that it was a great day, and we're going to get into it a little bit. What I want to start with here is big picture thoughts from 10,000 feet above. What are you looking at? What is your impression of what happened today, Justin? Hit me.
Yeah, I thought it was an incredible first step for this coaching staff to put together their first full class. Was it perfect? No, there were some guys we would have liked to probably have had in this class, but for what was the expectation when we talked about this? I think when they came in, I think we had all agreed as before we had the Bucky Report was in existence. We were on with Ryan, and I think I said, I expect a top 25, maybe a top 20 class to start off this first year, and that things would build off of that, and that we'd add some good parts in the foundation to move forward off of. And I think that was accomplished. I think I think as this year went on for this roster, we learned that there were a lot more holes than what we actually thought at the start of the season. And a lot of those were addressed in this class, but we were never going to be able to clean up everything once we got into the season and realized what we were actually missing. So at this point, I think they did an admirable job with the numbers that they were locked into of getting a really good first class in. And now we take it from here, and they know what they're capable of and where they can get better going into the next class. I look forward to this next year being an even improvement over this, because I think they're capable of it.
Yeah, I mean, I echo a lot of what Justin said. He hit a lot of the nails on the head. The one thing I would add is this was an opportunity for this staff to kind of put some tent poles in the ground to kind of show some places that there's some recruiting teeth here, and just to some of that just with the fan base, right? To show the fan base, to show the administration that forked over a ton of money for this coaching staff and put their necks out on the line, quite frankly, by not going with Jim Leonard, by going in a different direction. To go down to a Florida, I know we're going to talk about a win of recruitment against. Imagine a world where a cornerback from the state of Florida says, "Nah, hey, Miami, I think Madison's a better fit for me." Right? Imagine that world where he's like, "Nah, Coral Gables, I think Madison is a better fit for my cornerbacking talents." So I think my big picture takeaway is like this staff showed that they can go out and they can recruit with teeth, and that should be exciting for Badger fans.
One more thing to kick in here, Rajiv, before you go.
Yeah,
I think we dispelled some myths today, which was that Wisconsin cannot recruit on a national level. Wisconsin can't go toe-to-toe with the big boys. We learned that, yeah, they can. They may not win all the battles, and they might not be able to get into every battle, but they can definitely go out nationally if they have a good recruiting staff and prove and really compete with just about anybody out there.
That's what Gary Anderson always said.
Look, this to me, and I'm going to go into full believe with Rajiv mode here. This is Luke Fickell. This is what we wanted when we brought in Luke Fickell. You're talking about a guy that has put together one of the best recruiting classes we've seen in a long time, and he did it in his first season. Every single thing that this guy touches turns to gold in this program so far, and I'm extremely impressed. improvement on the field leads to improvement in recruiting classes and vice versa, right? Now, so we saw growth on the field this year. We saw a great recruiting class, and now the cycle continues. And I feel like now he has to show more growth on the field next year. We're getting players that we didn't get. We're competing in states that we didn't. When he first showed up at his press conference, he said, 350-mile radius, that's where I want to get a lot of my players, but I'm going to go nationally. And he did that. Would Paul Chryst ever have have saved Xavier Lucas after Miami came coming in for him? Absolutely not.
We would have got him the first time.
I mean, and I think back, guys, to a couple years ago where our recruiting department was basically minimal, next to nothing, in just complete shambles. And look where we are now. We just landed a top 20 class, filling specific needs that we needed, and we did so in style by pulling people from Florida, by pulling last day guys, by keeping guys, by doing everything that we needed. Our NIL clearly stepped up. There's so many positives to look at right now. I'm extremely impressed. And I just feel like it's one more step in the machine that is becoming Wisconsin Badger football and Wisconsin Badgers athletics, and everything going in the right direction to take us to the next level. And like I've said many times before, the Clemson level, to be the next Clemson in college football. Yes, I still believe, don't shake your head at me, Ryan. I believe we're just taking steps. It's not going to happen overnight, but what needed to happen was having a good recruiting class. And we just did that. Incredible stuff. I mean, am I wrong? Come on.
One other thing I want to throw in on this, and another interesting thing that points out just how much the recruiting has improved, or the capability of this class. Emilio Agard was a guy who originally left us out of his top 10 or top 12, I think. He did not include us. Hitchler stayed on him. We ended up getting his commitment from a guy who is one of the crown jewels of this class. Mm-hmm. And maybe not everyone agrees with that. Apparently 247 does not. But I know Ryan agrees with me on that.
I love Agard.
He's a top guy in this class. And probably
All-American. He was an All-American, by the way.
Yeah. And I think that his play backs that up. He's a legit guy.
Can I ping on something Rajiv said really quick? Because I made this point on the live show, I think it was, but we didn't really talk about it, and you hit on it. People need to understand that behind the scenes, there's a bunch of moving wheels, right? A bunch of machinations. So when you see a class stay together with schools like Alabama and Miami after your key players, understand what that really means is that your NIL department, that your recruiting department, that your communication department, that your recruiting analysts that work under Pat and Max, that's all working in sync right now. So don't be concerned with the NIL department if you just saw a class get held together with multiple blue bloods coming after players. Now, it's never going to be Texas NIL or Texas A&M NIL, but it's good enough, and it's really strong right now. So just understand that.
Legit question, do we want it to? Because there's a lot of headaches that come along with chasing after some of those players. I'm not sure Wisconsin's capable of
That's a good point.
jumping into that ring and being able to hold things together with the teams that have been doing it for 20 years.
I mean, that you're
we
talking
could pick guys here and there.
You're talking ultra blue blood category, and we're not that, and I don't think we're going to be that anytime soon, or if ever, and that's okay. But to me, it's that constant growth, and that's you're actually right. Like, there's so many things, Ryan, that are in that machine, and that's what's happening, and that's the thing that he changed from day one. He changed the overall culture, and everything trickles down from the top. That starts with McIntosh and Fickle, and look what happened. Let's grade this out a little bit, guys. Ryan, give me your overall grade for this class as you see it right now today.
I'm going to say, I said this on the Discord, B+, A-. I'm going to go B+. It's easy to get carried away in the moment, and people should be excited. It's not a perfect class. There are missing components here. I don't know. Are we going to expound on grades later, or are we just doing our quick grades now?
This is just the overall.
Yeah,
overall, we're going to go into the other. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I'll dive in. I'm a B+ too. I think there's two different grades I give this. There's a B+ from what the class actually is, and then there's what I think it means in the grand scheme of things in terms of how I feel that this all came together for this staff, and that I give it a strong A, because honestly, I think they did a great job with this cycle, even though they didn't address everything that they were looking at. This was towards the ceiling of what you would have hoped for a first cycle under this staff.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are just too pessimistic. It's an A, clearly. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna say A-, and I think that sure there are holes in here, and we'll get into that a little bit, but they did everything they needed to do, and they I think the not flipping of Xavier Lucas to me is such a stake in the ground of like, yeah, we're here. We are like you're here to play with the big boys, and that is a huge statement that I feel like would never have happened, and that specifically is why this is an A-, because we did not cave. We did not lose to a Florida school in this guy's backyard, and Xavier Lucas is coming to Madison. Getting Rob Booker back, things like that, those small things like really matter. We wanted this morning, we could have easily lost Lucas and Willard today. I mean, we wouldn't have been that surprised if neither of them were coming here. But the fact that we got them both and we got Booker back, and then in addition to everyone else signing, it just shows a lot. So I'm going A-. Justin, let's go positions a little bit. Let's start offensively. Give me some of your like looking at the offense. What are some of your grades that you have across the offense?
Well, let's just start. We'll go around the room, or each of us, and we're quarterback. I think Mabry's an A. I think I look at him from now. When you look at bringing in the raw materials, which is how I look at him, he's an A. From a physical tool standpoint, he's about as good as I think we can pull in without going toe-to-toe for 5-star guys. But he's like, I don't know of an area in his skill set that I look at and be like, well, he really isn't very good at this. Like mentally, you don't know with any of these guys. So I don't try to address that when a guy's coming in with a quarterback room, because realistically, high school football is not preparing them. I mean, he played in the highest level that would prepare him the most, but it's not remotely close to what playing high-level Division I football is going to be. Big Ten football is going to be a night and day change for him, just like it will for every other quarterback that's going to be joining the league this coming year. So from raw tool standpoint, I love his skill set. It's an A to me easily.
A. It's an A.
Yeah.
Again, it's the physicality, but it's also you identified the guy you wanted. You closed on him early, right? That matters. Like that's the guy Longo wanted. They got him early. And then the thing with Metor that I really like is he had a scouting report of the inconsistency across the middle, the intermediate throws, some issues there. He fixed a lot of that. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly impressive to see an athlete with his level of tool set make internal improvements at the high school level, and he doesn't always necessarily need to. I think that's really encouraging because if he continues that type of growth, the sky's a limit for this kid. So it's an A for the intangibles, for the athletic tools, for type A, plan A guy, for the competition he faced. It's an A.
I think the one thing that we'd have to say, in addition to what I'm going to answer about quarterback, is the entire class athleticism rating is so high. Like it's nice to see the athletes and the upside from an athletic skill set. I'm definitely going A as well. You guys said it all. I mean, Mettauer is definitely the kind of guy that we want to start bringing into the program, and it's going to fit well in Longo's offense. I'll start running backs. I'm going A again. You get guys like Dupree and Jones and Ituka. I mean, come on, like. This is a very, very good situation. There's so much raw talent there, and they're different. You got the big bruiser, you got the guy that can be on screens, and you got the guy that can be the every down back. I mean, there's a lot of skill and a lot of like assets when you look at those guys, and the talent spreads across the board from the running back position. So I'm going A there as well.
Yeah, I look at it, and in all honesty, looking at all three backs, I think you can honestly say they all have NFL ceilings, and for varying reasons. Like, I think every one of those guys has very impressive raw tools coming into the program. Now, will they all hit that? Not necessarily, but coming in, the raw materials that we have in that running back room, that's about as good as you can have. Like this is a haul that any team in the country would be happy to get at the running back room.
Mm-hmm.
A+. Oh, you didn't give a grade.
There you go.
Yeah. It's an A to me. So A+, same difference to me. I don't think it could have been better. Like people will say that we could have got Smith from in-state. I actually think that would have been a downgrade if you're replacing him for either Jones or Dupree. I don't think he's as good as either one of them.
Yeah, and listen, it's an A+ for me, and those pluses and minuses matter. As someone who had to scrape by for every GPA point in high school, it is an A+ across the board. It's an incredible class. It is an incredible class. I think 247 ranked it as the 4th best running back class in the nation. It is an incredible haul of talent, and I'll just go back to the thing I've always said. You guys nailed it with the top two. Atuka is underrated. Atuka's still playing, and
He's probably going to be the one that plays first because he's going to be in for spring.
I'm telling you right now, there are going to be multiple 2nd and 2s, 3rd and 1s that Big Ten fans are going to hate Atuka on because he's just going to bowling ball his way for 4 yards and a first down. I love
really underrated vision and nimble feet too.
Yeah.
Like we talked about how nimble Braylon's feet were coming in. The vision and feet that Atuka has are better than what Braylon had. Braylon had more physical like abilities and probably power and speed, but Atuka definitely shows some things on film when you watch him with things he sees when he sees a brick wall in front of him of just adjusting and being able to find room.
Right. Ryan, start off with the wide receivers. Right, we can go wide receiver and tight end together, I guess, if you want to, or we can probably split them out.
We'll split them out. We got 2 guys in the tight end room. I think they deserve their own.
Split them out. Wide receiver grade
C+. I think this is the if you have a fly in the ointment, this is it for this class. I like high on Barry Johnson. I've been on record as even not being quite as high on him as some other people. I just wonder if some of the skills as a jump ball guy in high school are going to translate to the college level as a 5'10-ish, 5'11 receiver. But he's really good at what he does. He's an explosive athlete in space. But this team desperately needs talent on the boundary. They desperately need a 6'1", 6'2 guy. There's more slot receivers on this team. I think it's when you go look at the receiver hauls for the top 5 programs, the top 10, the top 15, they're not bringing in one guy who's a 3-star, right? And I just think you needed to upgrade this talent more in this roster, whether it was a Marion Stewart or a prospect that we didn't even get that close to. To me, this is the biggest spot that's a letdown in this class. I like Kion. I think you needed more. I'm going C+.
Yeah, I went B-, and I say that given that I think that I'd actually say Kion's a B+ to me for a slot guy, maybe even an A-. But we flat out did not attack the boundary, and I think they badly needed a kind of a freak of a guy that can really stretch the field and has some size. And that's something maybe they feel like they have that in-house. But I think you need to be grabbing that on a cycle-by-cycle basis because we don't have enough of that in the wide receiver room right now, and we badly need some size and speed. So if they can get somebody in there, I think that was a missed opportunity, but that would have been the difference maker in this one if they could have got somebody who has showed some high-end ability.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. It's a C for me because while I like Barry Johnson, he's not enough. It's simply put, like you said, we got to go on the outside. He's clearly a slot guy, so we don't have that big game wrecker receiver on the outside that we need, and therefore, to me, it's a C. But still, like I'm happy with Barry Johnson for sure. And then I think that's a key thing. Chris Hart says, for a big position of need, I don't like how KBJ was the only wide receiver brought in. Dark Ray says you guys have to have faith in Green and Williams. I think receiver is fine. Thank you all of you for joining us. By the way, I've got a couple other comments that I'll hit after we touch on the offense. All right, let's go tight end. Justin, where are you at with tight end?
I think this is a strong B+, and I say that given that I think the guys have really high ceilings, but I think that it's a room that I don't think either one of them is a lock to be a stud. There's a lot of talent there, but there's some boom bust. I think that Booker's more likely to bust out of the two. I also think that his ceiling is probably higher as a receiver. Stack, I think, has a fairly high floor, but I question whether he's going to be a guy who can really truly stretch the seam a ton. We'll see what happens there once we actually get him on the field. If he can be a 4.6 guy and really charge up the seam by the time he gets a year under his belt in the weight room, that'll change everything for them. The grade jumps through the roof. But if he's a 4.8 guy that struggles to separate from linebackers, that's going to change some things. He's got a good frame to be able to still make some plays there, but he's not necessarily a guy who's going to be able to run away from a ton of people at the college level.
For me, it's an A. I love this tight end class. I think they complement each other well. Getting Booker back gives that basketball athleticism. I'm a little higher on Steck. That might be because I recently talked to him, and I'm hoping to actually release some of his Steck coming up. But he got much bigger and faster his senior year. So if you go look at the listed height and weight, he's about 40 pounds heavier than that now, and he got faster. So you're talking about a guy, I think he plays early. I think he's a more advanced version of Tucker Ashcraft, quite frankly, and Tucker played early. Kind of out of need, I get that, but I think he does play early. There's some really
he can block, which is a start.
He can block. They do some interesting stuff with him in high school and like post fade routes and down in the red zone. He's a really good kind of red zone, big, massive target. I love him. I think it's an A because I'm much higher on that stack upside. And then to me, Booker is a bit of a wild card, right? He could boom or he could kind of bust, but I like the upside there as well.
Yeah, for me, I kind of factor in the fact that there's it's such a position of need. So I think I let that sort of like add to my perception of the position, but I'm giving it an A because of that exact thing that you said, Ryan. I like Stack. I think he's upside. Definitely, he's going to be an answer to a question I have later down the list. And I think that's getting two, just by sheer number of getting two and flipping one back is so big. But yeah, for me, it's a solid A. I think Steck gets on the field, and I think there's so much upside, and it's such a position of need for this program right now. Ryan, O-line.
I give it a A, but then I deduct a letter grade because we didn't get Garrett Sexton. So
okay. I'm surprised you didn't just give it a D because we didn't get Garrett Sexton.
It's a really good class. Like I think we'll have a lot of commonality here. Like
you realize I'm never going to let it go if he busts, right? And you were so high on him.
If he plays in the NFL, I will never let it go either.
Yeah.
I will say this. I really like the 5 they're bringing in overall. Like they needed depth. I like the fact that we found interior guys instead of trying to find 6'7" guys. Emerson Mandel is like a rhino with a helmet. I mean, he is just so much friggin' fun to watch. I mentioned on the show earlier, that's kind of why we like sports. We like seeing people do things we can't do. I feel like he could toss a man into the stands. Like he is so physically dominant as a guard. So I like him. I will say, again, I joke about it. Sexton should be in this class, and I think he has a higher upside than Jensen and Coverly, and they could have had him if they had moved a little quicker. So that could come across as sour grapes a little bit. I think I would like this class more if he was there because he is a higher upside type of athlete. But it is a very good class overall. I'm going to go B+.
Do you think that Roy is somebody that we missed, or do you think that we're fine?
I like Roy. I like Roy. Roy got better his senior year. Like he reshaped his body a little bit. I like Roy a lot. I talked to his coach. He's a really good player. I think he's a right tackle, whereas Sexton has the ability to play on either side and more of a left tackle in space.
Okay. I'm strongly in the B+ for this group. I really like the group they brought in. The guys that they missed on, I look at them when you compare them to what they got. And listen, in my opinion, if you miss on a guy who you get a like value for, it's not necessarily a huge miss. Now, Sexton is probably a slight upgrade to Jensen if he hits. I think Jensen's probably a little closer, even though that we're learning that Sexton clearly can carry the weight. He does offer more athletic upside there. That said, Mandel and Corey, I will go on right now and say that I think both those guys are NFL players by the time they leave here. Barring injury, both of them are going to be studs. I've said it before to Ryan. I've said it before to you, Rajiv. I think that Mandel's ceiling is a first-round draft pick. I think he's that athletic, and I think he's that mean of a player that he is going to be one of the better guards that we've had come through here in a while. And I think Corey has an opportunity to be that type of center. Like he could be in the line of guys that we've had at center recently that end up being guys that are that early second round, first round type center. I think he's going to be that athletic and has that much upside at that position.
Which begs the question, Justin, why you're not rating it higher. You just told me that you have 2 guards that are going to play in the NFL. That's a pretty good class, my friend.
It is. I will say this. I really like Hayward. I'm not as sold on Jensen. And Coverly is a guy that I need to see it from because I think that when you see the athleticism that guys like Corey and Mandel have, and you watch the film watch the film of Coverly, he's not the athlete that the 2 of them are. Now, he has some things that will hopefully translate well for him in terms of physicality and mean streak, but I don't think that he has the same room for error in terms of his ability level where he's going to be able to get away with some things that those 2 are going to, just being freaks. They're guys that are going to, like, you're going to have an athletic linebacker try to get around them, and they're going to be able to cut him off because their feet are that clean and they're able to move that well laterally.
To me, it's an A- because of a lot of things that you said. The Coverly is the only one I feel like I'm not really that high on, but I really like Haywood. I've liked Haywood from jump. I think he is such a stud. He's absolutely, to me, that kind of tackle, that's what Wisconsin is desperate for, and we've had issues at that position. So yeah, to me, it's an A-. I want to get some comments in here before we move on to defense. Zach Bart says, landing Willer, keeping Lucas, and flipping Booker were huge wins. Let's not forget Willer had offers from schools like Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, Michigan, and others. Guy says B+ for the class, A for the recruiting staff. Try Glasson says overall A-. Comparing to last year before Fickle arrived, it's an A++. TJZK, the only thing missing is number 1 wide receiver and probably an extra linebacker. Jake Mayer. Think Kevin Haywood is going to be a difference maker during his time at UW. Tyler Strieber, Mandel is a unit.
Yes.
And Dark Ray, we desperately needed an upgrade over Hayden Rucci. Yeah, I mean, look, I think overall we've had pretty good grades on the offense, except maybe the wide receiver position. But that is a room that there is some depth currently right now, and depending on how well those guys continue to develop their time here, we'll see how it goes. Let's move over to D line. Justin, where are you on the D line?
Yeah, we kind of talked about this last night, and Ryan and I, and we've been bouncing back on this for a couple weeks since we've kind of heard some things that Willer might be involved in this. And I probably would say that we're at a strong B+. I think that earlier today, Ryan and I talked about it. What's missing in this is that 6'5", 6'6", long, twitchy, athletic pass rush guy that they don't have. That's the only thing that's keeping them from being an absolutely knock it out of the park class. But it's a really good group. And this is a definite upgrade from what we've been doing in the past. Like I could break this down and I can really look at this comparatively from what our composite averages are for over the last how many cycles. This group is pretty high. The only thing that's going to be dragging it down, I think Hank Weber probably is slightly undervalued in terms of his ranking. Not a ton, but he probably is. This is higher than what we've done in the past how many years? You have 2 4-stars in the group.
Yeah. I'd say B. I think I'm right there with Justin, which doesn't surprise me because you and I have been going back and forth on it. It's good. Like, it's really good. But as Badger fans, we need to be careful about overreacting to really good because the bar has been so low. I mean, Justin said that. I'm just kind of rephrasing it. Like, getting 2 4-stars is really good, but you need an edge guy. You really need an edge guy. And both Dylan Johnson and Ernest Willer, they kind of project similarly as body type. Willer has to put on weight, of course, but neither of them are that big outside edge guy that's going to kind of collapse the pocket, make this quarterback step up into that inside pressure, and you need that. And if you go look at the elite recruiting classes on the defensive line, they don't have 2 4-stars and Hank Weber. They have a 5-star and 2 4-stars. That's the difference. So that's why it's not an A for me, but it's really good. It's a good first step. I like the players. And by the way, Hank Weber grew on me a little bit more the more I watched him. Like, I think he is what he is, but he has
some Henningsen to him.
There's more juice there than I think originally he got credit for. It's a really good class, but I'm going to go B.
I really like this class, but I'm actually going to go B- just because I agree with you that we miss like a Dominic Nichols type of a player. And I feel like, and how I feel about the interior of the defensive line. And while we have some players on the team right now, I think we just needed more up there. This is a massive problem for us right now. And it's, to me, the biggest position of need, the entire defensive front seven that we need right now. And we're not quite getting enough. Really, really happy about Willer, really, really happy about Johnson and even Weber, but it's a B-. It's still an above average class, just not quite where I want it to be. Justin, let's kick off linebackers.
Yeah, I'm going to split this out because I think it bears breaking it out in this case. I think the 2 guys that we got there, I would say that this is a B+ group. I think that the ceiling that they have is very high. Anelu Lafayette, I feel like, is a guy who is, I put him at a B+, and that's because he maybe doesn't have quite the top end gear that you'd like to have, but he has a very good first step, and he is a guy who has a very high end motor, and he's probably ready to play day one. So he's a guy that I think comes in and really offers a lot. Heiberger is a little bit different. He might not be quite as developed from the experience standpoint. However, his athletic ceiling is as good as anyone we've had at the outside linebacker position over the years. Like, he could be a TJ Watt type guy. He could be a better version of Andrew Van Ginkel. Like, I think he's that type of athlete. If you look at the guys, he has a very similar frame to Van Ginkel, where he's very kind of long and lean.
He needs to put on some weight.
Yeah, if you can get him up to 245, he's going to be a guy that can just be an absolute monster off the edge because he's fast enough that teams are really going to struggle with his athleticism and explosiveness.
I'll go ahead, Rasheed. I don't know if you're going next.
No, please.
We do an outside. This outside linebacker group for me is an A. It might be an A plus. I absolutely love this group. So Lafayette is one of my top 5 in this class. I think he gets. Sometimes what happens when a recruit commits early, people they don't forget about him, but they kind of lose the hype for him, right? All these new guys come in, and you kind of forget about the guy who's been there for a long time. Lafayette is wired kind of like Herbig. He doesn't have the twitch, but he's really good off the edge. He's good in space. He hits like a ton of bricks. He's 235. Great hand movement. Tackles can't touch him. I love him. And then Heiberger, you put him in an NBA combine, he's going to have a top 5 vertical as an outside linebacker. He's 6'4", he runs a 4.6. He's incredible athletically. And that's the type of guy in 2 years. Like, here's the thing. He doesn't even need to fully refine everything to be a really good player. But if he gets close to doing that, he is an NFL first-round outside linebacker, the likes of which athletically the Big Ten doesn't see. The Big Ten, not just Wisconsin, like he is so athletic. So it's an 8 for me just because Lafayette bringing in and then the tools of Heiberger.
Let me throw a name at you. Do you think that Lafayette is kind of a Joe Schobert type? Similar builds? I think Herbig was a tad quicker, but neither one of them is a slouch. I think that they're actually somewhat similar there. Like, I think that they're pretty close athletically. We saw, it's hard to get some of the stuff out of your head that you saw from Schobert when he was here doing the dunk contest and stuff. But Schobert did not show as much in terms of like that first step twitch that we've seen with some of the other guys. He was just very, very slippery. And I think that that's probably how I would say Lafayette is. I feel guys like have a really hard time getting a hold of him.
I feel like Lafayette has a better athletic upside as compared to Schobert.
I think they just have a little different body types too. Like I like
they're stockier build. Like that Lafayette is stockier than what Herbig was, and that's why they kind of match in that regard, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Looking at the outside linebackers that we had on this team this year, let's talk about that for a second. CJ Getz, Darrell Peterson. I mean, that's exactly my point. And then you look at a guy like Allegro when he started playing and what immediate athleticism he brings. Well, imagine if you now have an entire group of people similar to the athleticism that Allegro brings. That's what you're getting with guys like Lafayette and Heiberger. And yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. Total A. I mean, this was such a problem for us. We were at the Ohio State game watching our outside linebackers get absolutely burned play after play and just abused, unable to get off any blocks at all. And I was like, that can't happen at Wisconsin. I'm sorry. There's things that are in your DNA, and it's the ability to run the ball and stop the run. And I cannot handle it when teams can run on us, which is why every show that I've ever been on, you've heard me talk about the defensive front seven. This is a huge piece of it. I'm with you. It's an A. Justin, what's your inside?
Really quick, I think I woke up in the middle of the night screaming, "Get to the edge! Get to the edge!"
Oh, brutal.
So I put Gauthier at, I'd say, a C+. I think he's very similar to a lot of the guys that we've brought in the past, which is, I think he's a good athlete. I think that he has some good instincts. We're seeing now in the group that we brought in a lot of guys that is not necessarily a lock to be somebody who's going to translate. And while I do like him, he's similar to Tyler Janze, I think, when you look at his skill set, and that he's a guy who could be very good physically. We need to see the instincts. We need to see his ability to move laterally and how he does in this. But I also think that we probably could have used a second inside guy. Like, I think that room needs to be rebuilt. There's not a lot in there that I love. Now, maybe we're going to do that through the transfer portal. But looking at numbers and what we've seen in that room, I question whether some of the depth in there is actually depth or if it's just misses.
Yeah, I think I'm more of a B-. Like I like Gauthier. I actually like him a little more than I think a lot of people do. I'm not saying you dislike him. I think he gets a little more sideline to sideline. Again, it's always hard when you watch Wisconsin football. Like, is he getting sideline to sideline because the running back is a 4'7", 4'6'5" guy? I mean, it's a little harder, right? Like this.
Fair.
But I like him. I think athletically he has a really good profile. He's physical. He's a hard-nosed player. Let's be fair. A lot of those types in Wisconsin do really well, have the college level, and I think he's got a little bit of that in him. I wonder if we took one this cycle because they're a little higher internally on the Jancy, the Sanborn, the Aiden Vaughn. I think that's a potential. I don't know either way, but I think that's a potential answer to why we took one as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just upset that we didn't get another piece of this. I would agree with you, Justin. I'm going C on this. To me, Gauthier seems like, my concern is that he's going to get just swallowed up, and he's going to do kind of what we saw out of Muma and Turner this year and just not be able to win the battles. I don't see enough. I just don't. I mean, look, I hope he's great. He's not anyone. When I look at the entire class, I'm like, I'm not getting super excited about anything I'm seeing with the guy in general. Look, I hope he's great. He clearly has upside. That's what recruiting is all about. But I'm going to give it a C. I do feel like we needed more in this area. Cornerback. I have a feeling I know what this is going to be for you, Ryan, but let's hear your cornerback grade.
I mean, it's an A. Like, again, I want to, at the end of this show, I want to talk about expectations too, because this class may not be an A in 2 years. And I want to get into that more later, but it's an A. If you win a battle for a 6'1", NFL type measurable cornerback out of Florida that had offers from Florida State and Miami, that's an A. You get Emilio Agard, who had 40 offers, Clemson, Alabama sniffing around there. Like, that's an A. And then, by the way, Harper out of Alabama, a 6-foot cornerback who can run, who has special teams versatility, who has great hands, who's a playmaking, versatile athlete. In a lot of classes, Jay Harper would be our crown jewel at cornerback. And he's athletically not that far behind a guy like Xavier Lucas. He's just a little smaller, but it's an A. You got 3 guys who I think are really good prospects here. And how often have we said that at Wisconsin?
Yeah, it's quite honestly, for me, it's an A+. And I say that,
mine too.
Yeah, I say, I mean, I think that you have 2 guys that I legitimately think are going to be NFL guys in Xavier Lucas when all is said and done, and an Emilio Agard, who I think will end up being a slot corner. But not only that, I think Harper has the tools to turn in that too. And when we look back at the Wisconsin cornerback recruiting that we've had, and I'll be doing a podcast on that later this week, one of the issues we've had with corners is that you could tell day one coming in that the guys likely were going to be maybe a UDFA guy or, a late round draft pick. And their issues are going to be athletically. They're not guys who are going to stand up at the NFL level. All 3 of these guys are capable of playing that position at the NFL level. And that's something that we have not had here. And I really think that at least Agard and Lucas are capable of pushing the 2 deep right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, they're an A+. I mean, as soon as you got Xavier Lucas, to me, it vaults right up to the top. When you add in Agard already, who, by the way, is an All-American. I mean, come on. Yeah, this is great. This is what we need. Obviously, we know how much of an emphasis Fickle puts on defensive backs and how important they are in Tressel's system. I'm all for it, A+. Justin, safeties to round out the defense.
I think this one this is an incomplete because I don't view Dunn as a safety. I view him as he is a dollar.
The dollar.
I think if you actually said that they recruited him as a safety, I would view that as a C-. Like, I don't think that he's a good fit for what this staff actually wants as a safety. But as a hybrid safety linebacker, I think I love him in that skill position. As a dollar position guy, I would say he's an A-, B+. And that's because when you look at that position, the number one thing that I look at it from it is, does this guy have the ability to float in space and in coverage and do things that are going to make quarterbacks uncomfortable? And we could look at what we've recruited traditionally at linebacker and say, we haven't had a guy like that. Watching the film on Dunn can most definitely run with a tight end and he can cover. He could probably get away for a couple of seconds on a wide receiver in that regard if he has to. He's not a guy you want to be leaving on an island too long, but he's got the length that he's going to close some holes that teams are going to try to exploit. And I think that he really has the athleticism if you want him to come downhill and attack like on a blitz off the slot. I think he's capable of doing that too. So I really like him in that position. I think he's what they're looking for. And I think that's why that you see a guy like Tackett Curtis that they're going for in the transfer portal. That's a guy I think that I could see playing that role really well for the same reasons. Like, the skill set really projects well for that.
Yeah. You get my heart fluttering with the mention of Tackett Curtis. Sorry. Yeah, I would say. I mean, that's a fair assertion of it. Just saying it's incomplete. I mean, I think you could have used a safety. So in that aspect,
I agree with that too.
what do you?
That's one of the misses of this class.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you give a grade to a position, if you don't get anybody and you think you could have used one, is that kind of an F because you didn't get somebody? I'm not going to say an F on that, but I think they missed by not getting somebody.
Yeah.
I think Dunn is super interesting though, for all the
Mhm.
reasons just laid out. I can't wait to see where his career goes. But I think they could have used a safety, like
Yeah.
more of a true rangy center field type of guy. Because if you look at this roster, I think that's still we've talked about it for a couple of years. I think this roster has more in the box type safeties that I really like. They
Yeah.
need a rangy.
They need another Braden Moore.
Well, I think they need like a Tanner McAvoy, not McAvoy, but they need that type of guy who can go sideline to sideline 40 yards down the field and make the play on those jump balls where Ohio State's receivers always come down with it. We need a dude who can go up there and high point those. And I don't know if that guy's on the roster. So I wish they would have gone after a player like that, but
Yeah.
I like Dunn.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Incomplete is good. This is a great comment from Tyler Strieber. Snowden, DeCluna, Agard, and Lucas, great young core. Look at that. Look at that group right there of what we have in the defensive backfield now, in addition to the safeties that we have. I mean, there is a lot of young talent in the defensive backfield, which is fantastic. Ryan, talk to me about your biggest recruiting win. What is the biggest win of the day for you? However you want to look at that.
Yeah, I don't even need.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I cut you off, but you need to finish that sentence. It's Lucas. It's 100% Lucas, 100,000%. Because again, I said at the beginning, imagine a world where you're going after our cornerback in Florida, in Miami, Coral Gables, the Hurricanes, the U, the Swagger. They want him, and they really want him. And he's like, nah, I'm going to go to Madison. I mean, that is such a the more we talk about it, I still don't feel like we're fully getting over the airwaves how impressive of a recruiting win that is. It would be like
it's a massive staff flex.
It'd be like Miami coming up to Arrowhead a couple years ago, right? When Joe Rudolph is coaching here and recruiting and taking offensive tackle that we really desperately wanted, despite us getting the last visit. Imagine like it wouldn't happen. So it's Lucas. It's Lucas 1,000% for me.
Yep, I completely agree with you. I mean, again, just for everything you just said, you hit the nail on the head. And even if you look at if you're looking at win as best player, that's obviously a different situation. Maybe you're looking at one of the running backs, or maybe you're looking at Mettauer. But as far as the ability to do this and to win that guy back from Miami, we're laying the flag in the ground. We're here to play with the big boys. It's exactly right. Justin, I'm assuming you have a similar answer.
Yeah, it's Lucas for me, and it's this level of stakes that were associated with it, and it's them planting a flag in the ground and saying, "We're not going to be a pushover. You're going to have to earn it if you're going to take it from us." And that's something that I don't think Wisconsin's always done in the past. Is if this would have been a situation with any other staff that I can remember during my lifetime, that if Miami wanted to come in late for a kid who's in their own backyard, even Barry, I think they take that guy from us.
Yeah.
And that's just because I don't think they have. We had quality recruiters under Barry, and that shows with some of the guys that they had. Like some of those teams had really high talent levels that people just don't understand how good they were, the late 90s teams. But they were not that staff was not the level of recruiting pedigree because it was a different time.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a lot more eval wins than it was actually going out and crushing recruiting, relationship building type stuff like we're doing now. Like all the recruiting and evaluation stuff, half of that some teams have, will get teams, they'll have companies do the legwork for them and give them dossiers on them and break it down from there. Like there's so much out there for resources now to discover guys. It's all relationship building. So now you're selling yourself. And now you have to prove, that you're the best fit for these kids a lot more than you had to, because you might have been able to sneak guys back in the past. Now you can't get away with it. Like everybody knows everybody.
I think it's also one thing that we haven't really said. This sends such a message to other teams in the conference. Think about Minnesota right now. They're like, oh gosh, what the hell, right? Think about Ohio State. Think about Michigan. Think about Nebraska. Think about teams that we've competed against in the past for big recruits. And that's just a statement now that not only are you adding these new teams from the West, we're also kind of stepping up that recruiting, which I think is great. We're gonna kind of close toward the end of the show, talking about expectations and then talking about what's missing from this class. So Ryan,
I do have one thought on the defense that I wanted to go over with you guys.
Yeah.
I want your perspective, because this is something I thought about today, which I thought was interesting, at least in my head. Does it not seem to you like the difference between the previous defensive ideal and what we have with the new staff is the new staff is effectively like looking at it from one-on-one perspective, and the previous staff looked at it as how can we shut things down as a whole? Like we'll cohesively try to limit the weaknesses that we have was the old staff's idea. And the new staff's idea is we're going to try closing those holes by getting the best possible athlete at every spot and try to limit the possibility of you beating us just athletically. Like it just seems like differently it's more scheme versus talent.
I think that's a really good point, Justin. And I think that showed on the field this year. You saw that with the old guards players, you could see that there were issues winning those one-on-one battles and that ability to kind of be a disruptive force on itself versus a disruptive force as a unit that you saw in years with Jim Leonhard. So I hadn't really thought about that before. I think that's a really good point. And yeah, I think that's exactly what we're doing. It's a different style and it's also just different scheme altogether. And we're recruiting players that we haven't seen before, but we are recruiting because they're going to play more in space and just in the way that this defense sets up. And you're recruiting players that and it's the key is athleticism, right? So anybody that we're bringing in now has to have a different level of athleticism than compared to before.
Yeah, I might push back a little bit on that. I think it's definitely a worthwhile discussion. I think this staff's just better at recruiting and identifying. So when you don't do as good of a job at that, then you have to scheme over some of the holes, right? I think if you look at the previous staff, I mean, it's not like they didn't get athletes. Like look at all those linebackers, right? Those guys are disruptive. I just don't think they recruited well, like overall, especially in the secondary.
And that's fair too.
And I bet you if you gave them a Xavier Lucas and some of these guys, they'd be like, okay, yeah. And then you would maybe have seen their scheme get a little more aggressive. So I think it's more this staff is much better at identifying and landing the talent.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah, no, it's a good question though. Let's talk about expectations. Ryan, you brought this up. It's a good point. So we're going to talk about a couple things related to this. First is who's the first on the field? Who do you expect? And then kind of project as to of these players, way too early prediction, who's going to have the most impact across their entire time at Wisconsin. Your prediction in that and first on the field and anything else you want to kind of get into about the future of this class. Ryan, let's lead off with you.
Yeah, let me start with what I was going to say earlier because I think This is a really good step, and I think we've all kind of talked about this in different ways. But this can't be the high water mark, right? If we really want to compete, if this is the recruiting class,
this is the foundation. It has to be the foundation and not the end game.
Yeah, this isn't good if this is the recruiting class in 3 years, right? Because you're not going to win a title with the top 20 class. The other thing I would say is the longer a staff is here, the less they can sell hope, right? So. You have to really
you have to start showing it on the field. Yeah.
Because talking to some of these players, and I've been lucky enough and very fortunate to talk to some of them, they were sold hope. I can tell you that directly. They say, look at what Luke Fickell did at Cincinnati. That's a direct quote from several players. They didn't say, look what happened in year one in Madison. So as this schedule gets harder, selling what he did in Cincinnati is going to get more and more difficult, and he's going to have to start winning. It's just an interesting thought as we go forward. So I just want to throw those two out there. Hey, this can't be the high water mark. It needs to get better from here, but it's a great first step. And now you got to start winning games.
Yeah, I agree. As I had that at the very beginning of the show, I talked about like that cycle, right? So improvement on the field equals improvement in classes, but then it has to go back around to improvement on the field. If you're not growing, you're going backwards. That's end of discussion in college football, especially in today's college football with the entire world of NIL and everything that comes with it. I mean, guys, imagine a world there. Like we're basically in a situation now where the top 10 teams can just get the top 10 quarterbacks from the season before any school they were at. Like that's the kind of system that we're in now. Like you're literally just going around like, oh yeah, you were good. Yeah, you're coming here to Ohio State now. Like that's the world we live in. So like everything has to be stepped up to a new level. And the way you're going to get those players in and keep those great players from going to schools like Ohio State and Michigan is to do it on the field, change the culture, and elevate the program and sell that not just the hope, but it's like actually show like, yeah, we're actually close to winning a Big Ten championship. You can see on the horizon of us competing in that playoff. That's what has to be sold. So yeah, it's a great point.
An underlying factor in results to that too is continuity. You'll notice something with the top teams in that group. They'll grab a piece here and there in the transfer portal, but you don't see Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State charging out there to grab 10, 20 transfers. They may grab a guy who's a top guy that's out there, but they do not wholesale change. They develop what they have, and that continuity is a huge factor in their ability to be better than other teams. And it's that growth that is something that Wisconsin has. It was really a good sign if you look at it we held on to everybody that was, for the most part, was productive in this team from this last year. We're not being rated. Yes, so far.
It's a long way to go, buddy.
We're not being rated by anybody who's taking pieces from us that were like high leverage pieces in our system. Like these are guys that were, for the most part, okay with losing. Like, we don't want to see anybody go, but we're okay with losing them.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So Ryan, tell me about first on the field. Who's first on the field for you next year in this class? Give me a name.
Can I give you two? Can I give it one on each side of the ball? Because I'm having a hard time deciding.
Yeah. It's okay. You can cheat. It's fine.
I'm gonna give the two Dylans. I think it's Dylan Jones at running back and Dylan Johnson at
wow. Okay.
line.
That's your first on the field. Okay.
Yeah. So really quick on Dylan Johnson, I got a word from somebody inside the recruiting department. I think I already sent it to you guys, but they literally said, watch the senior film. He's a menace. Like, I think that he's been slept on a little too much, and that's a major position I need. And he's 295 pounds and a 3-time state wrestling champion. Like, I think he's playing right away.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I have Anelu. I think he's also going to play right away. I think he's going to be in the 2 deep. I think he's going to be a pass rush specialist day one. I just think he's better than anything we have in that room. Like, you look at the motor alone and how slippery he is.
That's a good one too.
He's going to be out there. And I agree with you on Dylan Jones. I think that he is the guy. I have a little bit of a question with him in terms of what weight that he comes in, because I think he needs to be at least 200 pounds. So he's going to have to really hit it this spring semester to get ready for the summer, to get where he needs to be physically. Because if he comes in at 190, 195, that's going to be awful light going into his first season. But I think the talent is there for him to start. I think same thing with Dupree, that I just think that Dupree is going to be a guy that they're going to kind of specialize him a little bit more, which makes me wonder how quickly they're going to throw him out there unless they have 10, 15 plays for him. Because he's going to be pushed all over the place with what they probably want to do with him.
I'm going to go with a big position of need for us. I'm going to go Grant Steck. I think that's the guy that's going to be the first on the field. I mean, we need tight end production. Longo system requires tight end production, and we didn't get that. I mean, Ashcraft, I still believe in him. I think he's a good player and he can grow. But let's face it, he wasn't exactly what we had hoped to see right away. And looking at that room, who's the guy that, like, when I think about who can play right away, I'm thinking of, it's got to be you got to look at the need of that room and what availability there is on the field. What kind of skill set does that kid have versus the other guys? And then I don't think it's usually going to be a lineman in general for me. I don't think linemen play the first year, but
very few guys play freshman.
So Grant Steck is the guy that I expect to see. And I'll agree with you guys on Dylan Jones. I think he will be a guy that plays. Way too early prediction here. Who's going to be the most impactful recruit to come out of this class, Justin? Who is that going to be? Top guy. Only one name. Don't only give me one name.
And that makes it a little tougher. I think we probably just named him, and I think it's probably going to be Dylan Jones. Because I think that he has a chance to play 3 years here and put up. The first year he may only put up 600-700 yards if he gets heavy playing time, but I think he's going to be 1,000+ yard guy the other couple of years, and that's going to be he seems like the far more likely to continue to hit what the expectations are than anybody else that I think is in there. And Dupree's just harder to quantify because I don't know what he's going to be yet once he gets put into this offense.
Ryan?
It's Mabry. For me, I mean, if we're just talking who's going to make the biggest impact, it's if you believe in the quarterback, like, because some years we didn't in the class, but if you believe in the quarterback, then the quarterback's going to make the biggest impact. And I believe in Mabry.
And that's the only, I mitigated my risk there and went with the guy who I think running backs just have a more likelihood of hitting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just believe in Mabry, and like Dylan's a great call. There's a couple really good calls that you could go with here, but I think the long-term path here, I think the roads lead to Mabry starting in 2 years, probably something like that. And if that's the case, like the potential impact he could have on this team is enormous. I mean, it could be program altering, that type of stuff, if he becomes what we hope he could become. So that's where I'm going to head. But I love Dylan. Dylan could easily be 1,000-yard back twice over.
Yeah.
It wouldn't shock me at all.
I agree with you on Mabry because I think you're right. I mean, we're bringing in Van Dyke, and after that, we could actually absolutely see Metzhauer starting. But I'm going to give honorable mention to the guy that one I was also thinking about, and my friend Guy here is in with me, Haywood. Kevin Haywood. I've been on this guy very highly from the beginning. we have a long tradition of great offensive tackles, and I just feel like this is exactly the kind of guy that we need. I love his frame. I think he's going to add a little bit more weight. I think he moves really well. He uses his hands well, his feet well, everything about him. I like his film. I think he's going to have a huge impact, and he will be that guy a few years from now. We're looking at saying that is our like future Pro Bowler NFL offensive tackle, and I really, really like Kevin Haywood. So that's what I'm going to go with there. What's missing from this class, Justin? We'll kind of end on this. It's been a great day. The dust is settled. We've obviously had a lot of good things, but let's pick it apart a little bit and say, what's the problem? Where are you concerned?
Yeah, I think we kind of discussed it going along here. The big one is a kind of that big physical beast wide receiver, a guy who's 6'2", 6'3", 205, 215, that can really run and put pressure on a defense to keep him under wraps. The other would be safety. I think we all agree that that's a spot where we would like to get somebody in there that is a true, somebody who's ready to get out there and be an athlete and fit into that group. And then inside linebacker and that pass rusher, like that defensive line pass rusher would have been such a huge get to rebuilding that defensive line room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we did going through the positions. We kind of talked about it, but I think in general, you could just say front seven bodies, right? Like when you look at the front seven, just in totality, you're telling me we couldn't bring in more than I mean, you could have told me, hey, we have 8 guys coming in this class in the front seven. I'm like, yeah, that feels about right, right? And so I feel like just you could have used more athletes just in that front seven. I would have liked, here's one, just a couple more rangy athletes. That could be linebacker-ish, big receiver, big safety. I think they could have upgraded there a little bit. And then obviously Garrett Sexton, right? That's if we're really talking about what's missing there.
We're never going to have a discussion about recruiting and Ryan not talking about Garrett Sexton. For me, it's middle linebacker, 100%. I mean, that's clearly a position that we needed to get more. But look, in the end, guys, this is great. I mean, this is Luke Fickell's first class. We're not talking about his second, third, or fourth, or fifth. Like, this is number one. And before, when Luke Fickell first got hired on, we talked about what is his first recruiting class going to look like? How high does he need to be? How many wins does he need to have? He's doing everything right. And this is just one more step in that direction. And does anyone not believe that the future of this program and the future of these recruiting classes is going to slowly tick up? I mean, I don't know how. I probably think the ceiling is higher than you guys do, especially than Ryan does. But I mean, you got to think next year, this is not going to be the high water mark. I mean, you said this earlier, Ryan, you said it can't be the high water mark. Do you expect it to be the high water mark?
No. I don't know how much higher it gets though either. Right. Cause I don't expect this to be great next year. I expect this to be better, but struggle. Like it's hard to get when you start looking at the programs that if you have to jump 3 or 4 spots in the recruiting rankings, you got to jump some programs that traditionally recruit really well. So I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. I'm not going to put any limits on Luke Fickell. I still love him and the energy he's brought to this program. I think top 15-ish is doable, but it's like borderline top 15, and that might be the ceiling. Can you win it at the level you want with that type of recruiting? I don't know. Probably not. To be honest.
I think it depends on what you hit. It really depends on the players you hit on out of that group. What I will say on this is the takeaway that I have from this class, and people will talk about the things that we didn't address. They were never going to be able to address everything with this class. Like numbers are always going to be a problem the first couple of years because you have holes that there's just no possible way. You don't have enough fingers to close all the holes in the hull of the ship. Like you can't stop everything, but you can limit as much as you possibly can and try to kind of cover yourself as much as possible heading into the next year. I think they did a really good job doing that. And I think now they have some areas that maybe in the portal, if they want something, that they get somebody that's a little bit more developed, because not all of these spots are places that you want to get guys. And we're seeing that with middle linebacker. They're attacking guys that have a couple of years under their belts or are not necessarily freshmen that they can get some people with experience in and not necessarily have to lean on a bunch of young guys right off the bat. And I think that's a huge deal. Wisconsin's really going to get the opportunity to close some of those holes with some guys who may not be, superstars, but they could be really solid players for us.
Yeah.
By the way, really quick, when you said the ship has all these holes and you got to plug them all, I'm just imagining PJ Fleck, like trying to plug all the holes in it, thinking.
Well, that boat doesn't have a hole anymore.
That's a great way to end the show, to talk about how awful, we can just look at PJ Fleck every time we need to laugh and something like that.
According to Burns from Minnesota, our classes are comparable.
Yeah.
Everybody.
And that they're both
Exactly.
recruiting classes, I guess, is
Right,
what we're trying to say.
Right. Thank you to the great Ryan Herrings for joining us today. It's September of this year, guys, and the September 27th, I think, Justin and I started this, and it's end of the year. This is our last full show of the year. Ryan, I think Justin's going to be doing some recruiting stuff later this week, but this is the last time you're going to see me until the new year. But look, or no, actually not. Yeah, maybe next week we'll do some show, but before Christmas, that's what I was getting at. Sorry, before Christmas. I want to wish everyone a happy holidays and thank you all for your support of the Bucky Report. Justin and I have been so humbled and so thankful to everyone tuning in. I mean, obviously, we all know what a great job Ryan does with Locked On Badgers and the amazing community he's built. And the fact that a lot of you guys have come over and listened to us as well and made this show successful, we thank you. So happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas. Anything you guys want to add to either of those things at all? Justin?
No, I mean, I could not imagine having this much luck and having everything go so well the first 3 months out of the gate for us. It's been a huge deal. Get Locked On Badgers to 6K subscribers, huh, Robert? Well, all right. Send a few more our way, too. We're making the push to 1,000.
We're so close.
Yeah.
I love, by the way, one of you guys months ago said, "Oh, it's been such a slow push to 500 subscribers." Bro, my first 3 months, I had like 13. Like, I don't even
Ryan's mom was coming on there and commenting in the live shows.
You are a huge part of the success that we've had. So we're very
we owe it all to you, man. You're the one
absolutely.
that siphoned everyone towards us. Otherwise,
but what all three of us owe it to is all of you guys that are listening and watching us and everything you do for us. And the times that we've gotten together and gone to Madison and spent time with all of you and meeting some of you, it's been great. This has been a great year. I just really wanted to take a minute to say thank you and happy holidays to each and every one of you. And we will definitely talk next week. I think Locked On Badgers has a giveaway show coming up next week, which is going to be a lot of fun. I've got 5 things that I've assembled for that as well. Ryan's got a ton of stuff, so it's going to be great. Obviously, I'm assuming all of you are listening to this, watch Locked On Badgers. If you don't, that is the best show out there, period, end of discussion. So check out Locked On Badgers and check out this. If you're watching on YouTube, Ryan is holding up I didn't see the
Joe
signature.
Thomas.
Joe Thomas, look at that. I mean, best offensive lineman ever. It's great. So a lot of cool stuff. And that's honestly like I said, I'm contributing a few things there too. It's just a way to say thank you to all of the listeners and watchers out there. So thanks so much and happy holidays. All right, guys, this was great. Huge first recruiting class for Luke Fickell. And listen, we're one step. It's one step again in the right direction. But with that, Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.